A man fled the country under a fake identity, leaving behind a $73 million judgment and a trail of falsified financial records that took federal investigators years to fully untangle. His name was Antar, and for over a decade, he ran one of the most brazen frauds in American corporate history while building a brand so loud, so unmistakable, that Crazy Eddie became a household name. It started with a single store in Brooklyn. Eddie Antar's family opened their first electronics shop in the 1970s, and Eddie quickly became the face of the business through manic, screaming television commercials that promised customers his prices were, in his words, insane. The ads worked. Crazy Eddie expanded into a chain of 40 stores across the New York metropolitan area, and the company went public in 1984, selling shares to investors who believed they were buying into a thriving, fast-growing retail empire. What investors didn't know was that the company's books had been fiction for years. Behind the scenes, Eddie Antar, his father Sam, and a network of family members and employees had been running a coordinated cash skimming operation since before the company even went public. Cash from store registers was diverted before it was ever recorded, then funneled into secret bank accounts overseas, primarily in Israel. This wasn't a side operation, it was baked into how the business ran. When Wall Street analysts expected double-digit same-store sales growth and the real numbers fell short, Eddie and his father didn't accept the gap. They closed it artificially. In one scheme that investigators later nicknamed the Panama Pump, they wired previously skimmed money out of Israeli accounts, routed it through Panama, and brought it back into the country disguised as new sales revenue. It was enough to convince analysts the company was hitting its growth targets, when in reality, the difference was manufactured entirely from money the company had already stolen from itself. The fraud didn't stop at cash skimming. Company executives also falsified inventory counts, inflating warehouse and store stock levels by millions of dollars to make Crazy Eddie's balance sheet appear stronger than it actually was. Auditors who should have caught these discrepancies either missed them or, according to later litigation, were complicit in looking the other way. For more than a decade, the company's reported financial performance bore little resemblance to its actual operations. The fraud began to unravel after a hostile takeover attempt brought in new management, who discovered the inventory and accounting discrepancies almost immediately. What followed was a years-long unwinding of one of the most elaborate retail frauds the SEC had ever investigated. In 1989, the SEC formally charged Eddie Antar with securities fraud and insider trading. Rather than face the charges, Antar fled the country. He spent time living under a false identity in Israel, evading capture for years while the SEC pursued a global effort to track him down and recover the assets he'd hidden. He was eventually arrested in connection with extradition proceedings and returned to the United States in 1993 to face trial. His first trial ended in conviction, but it was later overturned on appeal due to findings of judicial bias. Rather than risk a second trial, Antar pleaded guilty in 1996 and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The financial reckoning extended far beyond Eddie himself. 9 members of the Antar family were ultimately convicted or settled charges related to the fraud, with civil judgments against the family exceeding $1 billion. The SEC alone obtained a judgment of over $73 million against Eddie Antar individually, and total recoveries across litigation eventually topped $150 million. Crazy Eddie remains one of the clearest examples in financial history of how charisma and aggressive marketing can mask total operational fraud. The same energy that made Eddie Antar a local celebrity was the same showmanship that kept regulators, auditors, and investors looking the other way for over a decade. It's a reminder that the loudest, most confident voice in the room is sometimes the one with the most to hide. If you found this story interesting, the next one might be even harder to believe. Tomorrow, we're covering a case where a savings bank collapsed not from one bad decision, but from a single employee who was allowed to approve his own loans for years. Subscribe so you don't miss it.